You're watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and in this edition, we are going to be carrying on again regardless, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
I am Matt. He wasn't in Carry On regardless.
No, he wasn't, but
No,
neither were
just
we, and we're
factual
carrying on
inaccuracy.
regardless
Okay.
because, despite the fact that really this should have run its course, we are doing a second episode. For the benefit of anybody who doesn't remember or didn't listen to the first one, I threw in the idea based on a question from the General Witchfinders podcast that had been on Radio Free Skaro that I extrapolated it from, I guess. What would have happened if Peter Cushing had carried on as Doctor Who in a movie a year for the rest of, well, for the rest of the classic series run, for the sake of the podcast, and they had adapted one story from each season of Doctor Who as a movie along the sort of lines of Friendly to Seven-Year-Olds that the sort of two Peter Cushing movies were. So what we're doing is going through season by season and choosing which we think is the most appropriate story to be made into a sort of kiddie-friendly Doctor Who movie. With Peter Cushing, although I said at the end of 10 movies he would finally step aside, there would be no regeneration. You would just get a movie the following year with a different actor, much like you get with Bond, for example. And Jim Dale would be our second Doctor. And in 4 seasons' time, that's going to change into a third Doctor. And I'm not going to reveal the identity of that in case people can't remember it from the last one. So we'll get there when we get there. But first, we've got 4 seasons with Jim Dale as the Doctor to choose a story from that we think would be the most appropriate adaptation. And we start with season 15 then. So, okay, we've all got lists of the stories in front of us so that we can see what we've got to choose from. As a bit of an aid memoir, I guess. Matt, is there anything from season
Invisible
15?
Enemy.
Well,
I
it
mean
kind of does.
that's it's it's based on a film. Um it's very kind of the concept is something that really you need a film to realize rather than a television story. Um so the
Yeah.
idea of a kind of a futuristic updated um fantastic journey, fantastic journey, fantastic voyage,
Yeah,
fantastic
fantastic
something.
journey.
Well,
Yeah.
That
Voyage, yeah,
actually
yeah.
is that
yeah,
actually is fantastic. Um, keep K9 in there. K9's a kind of a good filmic device. Um,
Space
so I mean,
stations, space rockets, all this kind
yeah,
of stuff. People in funny makeup who've been taken over.
kind of feels like the obvious choice, slightly.
Well,
Um,
John, do you want to throw in a less obvious choice?
I was going to throw in Underworld
Oh,
ooh,
because again, it's this big science fiction concept, but obviously they didn't have the resources to do it justice in the original. It's a big kind of epic story because obviously it's based on that Greek myth, and that's kind of familiar underpinning to all the kids of this era because it was very common. It certainly, I had a what's it ever the issue with the Disney Encyclopedia. I knew my myths. So I think you could using that as a backbone and actually giving it a decent kind of production rather than relying on CSO. I think you can make something genuinely big and epic and kind of sort all the flaws of this story out.
the thing is, these are still fairly low budget movies, John.
Yeah, but it's more than a BBC budget.
Well, that's
So
true. I'm going to throw in a third idea. I think you could do Horror of Fang Rock as a sort of not comedy, but much more light-hearted with a bunch of characters, a bunch of toffs and lighthouse keepers stranded on a tiny island while a big green blob goes chasing them around the island. I think there's a way of doing that where it's not stuck in the lighthouse as much as the story is. I mean, the story is clearly it's designed to be filmed in like 3 or 4 sets. But I think there's a version of that where the island's slightly bigger and the blob is chasing them around and impersonating them. That could be a lot of fun.
I mean, Fang Rock leans into the carry onness of Jim Dale,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
historical setting. I mean, there's sort of, and he was in Carry On Screaming, so I mean that's his era of the Carry On films.
Well,
But I
absolutely.
don't know whether that leaning into the carry onness is a good thing for the first Jim Dale film, or maybe something that
Well,
they want
no.
to like completely dislocate from.
Oh no, this is only our first Jim Dale film of this episode. This is actually his fifth.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
in
we
that
broke
case,
off halfway through Jim Dale, if you remember.
okay.
Because the only thing I said about Ban Rock is we picked Talons last time. So do we want to do two Victoriana films in a row?
Well, you don't necessarily need to make it Victoriana, but yes, in the sort of form of the last episode, between the three of us, we rotated who gets final choice and who gets to say which one we actually get to do. And I'm going to surrender Horror of Fang Rock, much as I think it would be fun. But I do think The Invisible Enemy, with its journey into the Doctor's mind and with its robot dog and spaceships and shenanigans, I do think that would be a fun film for the kids, I think.
Isn't Fang Rock
Yeah.
1920s anyway?
No, it's
No,
1901. It is literally
Oh,
either just
then
before or
it
just
is.
after Victoria dies.
There is a Bonar Law reference, but he wasn't Prime Minister at the time. So
okay.
Yeah, I think it's literally just months after she dies
Oh, so
or
it
months
is
before.
Edwardian then.
It's one or the other, but it's
That's
right on the cusp.
such a ridiculous statement, John, to talk about Victoriana when Horror of Fang Rock is blatantly an Edwardian edition.
I will give up my history degree completely. Sorry.
Yeah.
It might be
As many people should.
it might be the
Yes.
it might be taking place during the long Victoriana.
The long Victoriana. I mean that probably is a thing.
Okay, season 16. So we're going to disregard the whole hunt for the key to time and just choose one of these stories.
See, you could do the Key to Time as a whole chase
I
film
was going
through
to
the
say
through the
that.
scenarios.
Yeah. John's back in my good books with that
Hey,
comment. Because the whole thing could be the film, an
yeah.
anthology movie.
Well, John gets to decide this time.
Oh,
I mean,
John.
okay then, but for the sake of it, I'm going to pull one out. And because we
Ugh.
went because we went spaceships and future in the last one, I think the androids of Tara, where it looks like it's set in the past, but actually it's on an alien planet, or maybe an alternative past where you've got robots, robot doubles as well. I mean, the androids of Tara. Some of these stories already feel like they were made for this, don't they? And I think the androids of Tara is definitely one of those.
I think
So
for me it's either the Arnold approach of having one film for the whole team. But if I was going to put out, I think the Ribos operation, that kind of the con men in that there's something about Jim Dale works really well with that sort of humor as well. So the kind of small scale con man on an
yeah,
island, on a sort of an alien planet, and then yes, it's sort of historical. It's sort of an historical setting, but you can kind of tweak that, and it becomes more interesting and not something you often see in films. I think so. Invisible Enemy is a very sort of Star Trek, Star Wars, white and shiny
yeah.
future.
And
Rivers Operation is
you could
completely
really,
alien, based on sort of
but you can replay up those comic elements because Jim Dale's energy is very different to Tom, but the one Tom Baker gives
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Well, John, you get to decide this time. Is there a single story you'd like to point out before you choose the whole season as a massive chase sequence?
Yeah, so what I and again, this is a personal myself, but I would go. I do think Androids of Tara is the absolute perfect one. It's almost made as a film. It is obviously it has that element of Prisoner of Zenda, so it has that kind of children's classic film element thing to it. So if it's one story, I would go Androids of Tara, but if not, like Matt, I would
It's your
say
choice, John. You choose
do
what you
this
want.
as that little okay. I'm going to say we do it as the season across because we get 20-minute or half-hour chunks in every one of these
15
scenarios,
minute. It's an
and I think it was
18 minute.
15 minutes is fine.
Oh, you can cut,
With
yeah, but you can cut the Stones of Blood chunk down to
Yeah.
by quite a
yeah,
way.
yeah, and if you want to, the Android's Tower, it's a 2-minute job, isn't it? Oh yeah, we've got the chunk. See ya, bye.
Yeah.
So
All right.
yeah, I'm going to say do that quest scenario across the whole season.
Sure. Right, season 17 then. I'll go first. Obviously, I think the one that we should be doing here is Nightmare of Eden because what kids film doesn't resolve with the creatures dissolving and turning into sort of toxic drugs. No, Creature from the Pit. it's a jungle planet. It's got people scuffling around trying to get metal. So it's about sort of there's a sort of I mean, this is like the sort of thing that you're probably learning about in school is the difference between sort of creativity and mechanics and sort of physics versus art and all this kind of stuff. And so Creature from the Pit's got this weird thing going on where it's about wood versus metal. But really what it's about is about creativity versus, just sort of the mechanics, the sort of real black and white stuff that you need to do. And it's got the idea of this huge creature being in this pit. So the title alone makes a promise that I think you don't fulfill till half the film is over. And then you can just have a lot of fun with that concept. And you tell probably a very different sort of you'd format it, you'd sequence it differently from the way that David Fisher does because he has to do it around 4 episodes, and so he's got certain beats he needs to hit. You could do it very differently, but also you'd have the wolf weeds, wouldn't you? So I don't know. I think Creature from the Pit lends itself to being a film for 7-year-olds. Matt, no, Neil, you're no.
Am I
Is it me
choosing
to
this
choose
one?
this time? It's me to choose this time, isn't
Okay.
it? So go on, Matt.
Well, I mean, it's tempting to have Sharda, just so we can have yet another version of Sharda with a different sort of format. But also, Sharda does kind of work. It's got contemporary, a filmic location like Cambridge. It's got the space station, um,
Prison in Space.
but it's a little bit too Doctor Who continuity. So I think, I mean, I'd go with the obvious, or one of the obvious choices of City of Death. You can pretty much create a film out of that without changing the script. And I mean, you could take the film on location to Paris quite easily. If you can take the TV series to Paris, you can certainly take a film crew to Paris and just do it there. It's got a heist element, um, time travel, you know, and it's got the past, present, and future because you've got the Renaissance, you've got contemporary Paris, and potentially you've got the Jagroff wasteland, and you
Well,
can sort
you've
of
got
stretch out those elements and balance them a bit better.
Well, you could also do a bit like in your Key to Time film that you've just had. You could do little sequences with the splinters that have been.
Hmm.
So you could have a sequence in Egypt. You could have a sequence in ancient Greece. You could have a sequence in the future. The one in the that we have doesn't necessarily have to be the most advanced one. There could be a desolate future or something. So you could have all those bits as well
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
liven it up.
and probably get Douglas Adams to write it if you can sort of pin him down.
Yeah, you probably could. John, what do you think? Anything else from
Often
17 grab
I
you?
wasn't going to pick City of Death because it's never been one of Eddie's favorite films, which are
Mm.
her favorite stories. So I was going to say for a kids' film, it's The Horns of Nimon
Yeah.
because it's got that big science fiction that, again, might not have a huge budget, but again, it's bigger than a BBC budget. It's not just going to be all the tinsel. You're not just going to put in Graham Crowden's first take of, my dreams of conquest and his death scene. You are going to be able to kind of do those monsters justice. You may make them a little scary, you actually have time to work them out properly.
And do you know what else
Because,
you could do? Instead of making it all about the corridors that move and it sort of looks very much like studio sets where they've just moved the slats around, you could actually have a proper maze.
yeah, this is it. You've got that mythic background. I think Anthony Reed's version of Doctor Who, which takes from old classic stories, is perfect for this whole format.
Yeah, yeah.
If you could get him as a series consultant on there, I think by this point.
So I've got to make a choice here, haven't I? And I'm very tempted by a City of Death where you get to go and see the Jagoff in ancient Greece or ancient Egypt. But actually, I think John's persuaded me. I think it's a kids' film, the sort of legend of the Minotaur taking place in outer space, and yet still recognizably the legend of the Minotaur, because you'd lean more heavily in that direction, wouldn't you? I think that's a fun thing to do because I'm not sure we've done that in any of the ones we've done yet. It's sort of like a science fiction Doctor Who retelling of a classic story like that. So yeah, I think definitely we go that way. Right, season 18 then. And although we don't know it yet, at the end of this, Jim Dale is going to walk away and we're going to recast the Doctor. But this is not for a regeneration story. This is just for another Jim Dale story that just happens to be his last. Um, who am I getting to choose this one? John. So Matt, I'm going to get you to throw
Oh
out the
no,
idea.
no, Matt, man.
Oh, is it Matt's
Have I
turn to
not done?
choose?
So I
Oh,
did.
okay.
I did the key to time. You've just done that one, so it'd be Matt if
Oh
we're going
yeah.
in
Oh,
order.
in that case, John, you choose a story.
I'm
I've
see,
lost all sense of what we're
yeah.
doing on this podcast.
Yeah, it doesn't show. This one, I think, was one of the toughest ones because it's such a contrast to the previous one, and they're deliberately kind of shying away from these child-friendly stories. But the one I kind of thought would be good would be Keeper of Traken, because again, you've got this story about you've got an easy kind of high concept. It's this alien world. You can really learn to that kind of pastoral nature of it. And you get Jim Dale as this. We've had the Master and films before, haven't we? I think in one of the
Yes.
earlier ones, so we can
Hmm.
play back into that, and it's kind of nice to have Jim Dale going out against this familiar character as well. So
Is Sid
you can
is
read
Sid James still
styles.
alive at this point? I think he's dead, isn't he?
Who,
Sid,
sorry?
Sid
Sid
James.
James,
Sid James as the Melker.
as the crispy master.
Whoa.
He's closer. It's around now. This time he dies. I can't remember it is now. But yeah, I would go with I think Keeper of Dragon because I think the others don't quite fit the kids' film brief as much as this does.
But although I think, like with Horror of Fang Rock, I think almost all of the others, there is a children's friendly film version of them that you could make. The Leisure Hive, you've got the Doctor getting aged inside of a machine. Meglos, you've got the Doctor's double, who's a cactus. Legopolis, shenanigans with the TARDIS. And so you've got the going inside the TARDIS, and weird things start to happen. You could have a sort of Phantom Toll Booth type thing going on with a version of Legopolis. But I don't think, and Warrior's Gate, I mean, look at what you could do if you did a children's version of that. But I don't think any of those has quite got enough. So although some of those have got very strong ideas, I don't think there's enough ideas in any of those stories to sort of justify a children's length film version of those stories. I mean, you could add stuff, but the one that screams out to me is State of Decay for that very carry on screaming type idea. The idea of an alien planet where three vampires have landed in a spaceship, and it's the spaceship itself, which is the stake that destroys them at the end. And it might be very easy to say, oh, but you can't do State of Decay for 7-year-olds. But the BBC broadcast it in 1981, in a Saturday tea time slot. So clearly you can. So if it's just a case of the tone of it, I think you can tone it down and make a version of State of Decay. And yeah, I guess you could even have an Adric type Artful Dodger character in it. He wouldn't be a companion. He'd just be somebody you meet on the planet who is the son of one of the local farmers or whatever, and who becomes involved in the story. Just think State of Decay actually is a story that you could have fun with in this sort of format. Matt, any other ideas? And make your
I mean,
choice.
my choice was State of Decay for most of those reasons. I think the other stories in this season are too conceptual to sort of pin down. I think I'd love to see a Keeper of Traken film, but I think it would be a sort of Fellini kind of Jacques Rivette
Hmm.
art house film. I don't think it would work that well for kids. I think it would look beautiful and the ideas would be really compelling and it would be a great adult film. But actually for kids, kind of there's nothing real, there's no real excitement. Whereas State of Decay, there are vampires and they get killed by a spaceship turned into a steak at the end. There's a giant vampire in it. Um, so yeah, also my choice.
Okay. Right, so Jim Dale walks away, and so we started this whole thing with Peter Cushing, who was in the Hammer movies, and then we went with Jim Dale, who was in the Carry On movies. And now they're going to cast a new movie Doctor, and it's going to be a sort of star of children's television, a, an actor whose face almost everybody knows, who has been in the Carry On version of a Hammer film, and who also has a little bit of previous with being Doctor Who. But he's in a different point in his career now, and I think actually John Pertwee is perfect casting for this kind of thing. I mean, he was when in my childhood, I didn't know him. Well, I clearly knew him later from Wurzel Gummidge, but at the time of Doctor Who and when I was getting into the Tom Baker stuff, I had records with John Pertwee singing "The Runaway Train Went Over the Hill and She Blew" and stuff like that. It was just he was a
Stevie.
children's star. So we have John Pertwee for the rest of this run. We're going to have 8 films with John Pertwee, starting with season 19. This is one for you to choose, isn't it, John?
It is indeed.
Right, so I'm going to get Matt to make the first suggestion.
Oh, crikey. I'm sort of tempted by Earthshock. I mean, just start with a bang. Um, I think I would dump. And Pertwee's been in Doctor, so Pertwee's Doctor Who exists, doesn't it, in this alternate universe? So I think there's something. So my choices are now going to be give Pertwee something he didn't really have in his time, and see how it pans out in a film form. So putting him in front of Cybermen on a spaceship and a slightly grittier story.
Well, I don't think it would. See, I think the reason why you bring John Pertwee in is to keep the grittiness out.
Yeah, but I don't know. Well, maybe make it lighter than.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, good luck keeping the grittiness out of the next few Sayward seasons, is what I'm saying. But I mean,
The concepts, though, don't necessarily need to be gritty, do they? Cybermen
it's
on a
either
spaceship.
I think Earthshock's the obvious choice. I think Time Flight is probably the left field choice, and Time Flight is tempting. But I think just the idea of seeing Pertwee and what he would do in a story like Earthshock, in a sort of concept like Earthshock, would be really interesting.
Do you know what I'm going to suggest? This is kind of high concept. And actually, this is not really a story. But if you strip out the stuff that's not story and take the bit that is a story and turn it into a proper story, you can see where I'm going now, can't you? I think if the Doctor turns up in a village that doesn't really exist but thinks it does, I think you get to tell a sort of Brigadoon type story. So you can have a story. So in Brigadoon, right, it's about the idea that this village only wakes up once every 100 years just for one day and then falls asleep again for another 100. Is it 100 years or is it a year? Whatever. It wakes up for
Yeah.
one day and goes back to sleep. I think the I and but in Brigadoon, it's a love story about 2 of the people who live there, or one of the people who stumbles into that village and falls in love with one of the people who's in that village who's going to be asleep again in, like 12 hours time or whatever it is. If you took Castrovalva and actually told a story in the village and had the trappings of but it's all collapsing in on itself, coming in through the story, so it ends where the Castrovalva that we know would end, but has a bit of an intrigue and a bit fun. The Mouse That Roared inside an Escher. John, I dare you not to choose that.
I mean, I do take what Matt said, but I Earthshock, I just think it only works as that kind of thriller film, and I'm not quite minded to go there. I was half going with the Visitation, but again, we've been to kind of that pass with the peasants just before. The only other one I was thinking of was Black Orchid, but I think as a film, you would need to do it as kind of one of those used to know Poirot films from the 70s.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't quite go with that, but I really was kind of persuaded by that concept of Castrovalva, that kind of leaning into the kind of mystical elements of it rather than the science fiction ones. It's
These
gorgeous
volumes are
idea.
all the same age.
Yes, exactly. You could see Perk would have that big moment. He'd
Yes.
love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've
there is
as soon as said that, I was sold on it.
there is the other
Gorgeous.
challenge of imagining Pertwee saying the word Earthshock and how he would get his Earth.
I mean, what I really want to see now, and maybe one day AI will be able to recreate this for us, is John Pertwee absolutely, totally out of his sphere in Kinder. I mean, he'd be utterly lost in Kinder, John Pertwee. But I think we'd be mad to suggest that. Right, season 20.
It's too adult a story, isn't it?
For
Kendra.
sure. Right, this is going to be my choice. So, John, you make the first suggestion for season 20 and good luck.
I was going because I can never resist the imagery of the story. I am going with enlightenment because look at that imagery on a silver screen. That moment of revelation where you find it's the ships in space. It's not a BC background, it's a film budget. Oh my God, I would take that every single time. And just the entries, and you're visiting the different ships. You've got, again, different cultures, so you've got room to explore. You've got room for the designers to have fun, for everyone to bring their A game on this. So it's just almost as it is, enlightenment with that kind of slightly conceptual choice at the end, which you can turn into that little moral at the end of the kids' film
Yeah.
beautifully as well. But it's a perfect kind of adventure story for this children's world, I bet. So, and it keeps that Sayward grittiness out.
Matt, I'm going to make a dare for you then. I dare you to choose Arc of Infinity.
I mean, well, I was considering doing Arc of Infinity. I like the Amsterdam stuff, but the problem with Arc of Infinity is it relies on a backstory that our films don't have.
Yeah.
So I don't think that works. And Mordred Undead is the same. Snake Dance has the Kinder issue. I mean, the King's Demons would be interesting. I think the King's Demons heavily expanded. We haven't been back that far in time in one of these films, and we know that the Time Warrior works with Pertwee, so he's got sort of medieval
And
precedents.
he would happily do those sword fights.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of sort of it's yeah. I mean, I'm basically tempted by Enlightenment because of the flying sailing ships, but setting a film on location at a castle and going all for it, I think that would be really interesting.
I guess, actually, yeah, I kind of agree. And King's Demons was tempting me. So setting it in a castle, I think you've just done that fairly recently with State of Decay. I mean, depending on how you do State of Decay, but presumably you would. Do you know, I think Snake Dance is something you could do. I think setting it in a village where something weird is happening, and the weird thing that's happening is the snake emerging. And but you'd have to do what I've just said you should do with Castrovalva. You'd have to have a kind of B story that you think is the A story, which gradually morphs into the A story that you think is the B story as the snake emerges at the end. I think that would be terrific. But it is kind of what I've just said we'd do with
Yeah,
Castrovalva.
because you don't need Kinder on there, is the thing. I don't
No, you
think
don't.
that's because it's just about nostalgia and it's about living in the past. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this was the genius of the two stories. Although Snake Dance is a sequel, it doesn't rely on Kinder, so it stands up in its own right. But sailing ships in space, and also you wacky races it up a bit. So the original is kind of essentially, like half a dozen sailing ships, but this time you'd have a sailing ship, you'd have a yacht, you'd have a space cruiser, you'd probably have a car that flies or something, or a flying bus. Yeah, flying bus. One of the vehicles is a flying bus, and the doctor and whoever he's got along for the ride have to go between the different vehicles in space to get to the bottom of the story.
John's face is a bit like a Hollywood scriptwriter who's now talking to a producer who's going, and then we have a giant spider at the end, and it would be great. And John's going, no, I think just sailing ships would be the best way. I don't think we need to. No,
Where's my
no.
big cigar? Yeah.
No, but I think you would. I think you would kind of give it a bit of the old. Right, season 21 then. This would be Matt's choice. So,
It will.
John, give us a suggestion.
Good luck.
There are two I'm kind of thinking of here. The really left field one would be the Twin Dilemma because again, you've got a big slug as a villain, and that's a lot of fun. And you don't have to deal with the absolute dog shit at the start with
Yeah, yeah.
Colin and Perry. You don't need to deal with a regenerative crisis. You've just got a big kind of mad science fiction idea. Again, big space stuff. You could get some lovely visuals in there on that as well. And I was thinking of the Awakening too, but no, I want to go with the Twin Dilemma because we could get a coherent version out of this, I think, and
Maybe.
do Mestel properly.
I mean, yes, there's the Saywood stuff, but if you just take the premise and give it a totally different tone, I think Warriors of the Deep, where you've got three different sort of reptilian beasts invading an undersea base, that's a story you could do for kids. But yeah, I think The Awakening is by far and away the obvious choice. Take the nasty stuff out, where because I think what
Oh,
Saywood does.
the beheading tip.
No, the tone of it is the thing
Yeah,
that I don't like about The Awakening, where it's all about how angry can everybody be and how you can channel anger. And I think that's a dark side to the story that I don't think you need. But having a giant sort of stone demon creature living in the walls of a church, while at the same time historical reconstructions are going on that are taking on a bit of a life of their own, I think it's great. I think The Awakening would have worked so much better as a four-part story than it does as a two-part story, and I think it would make a brilliant concept for a children's film. It's it is exactly the kind of thing that the Children's Film Foundation would have done wonderfully well in the 70s and here at the start of the 80s. I think it's exactly the kind of thing that John Pertwee would have an absolute ball. It's the Time Monster to a sort of slightly lesser degree. But The Time Monster is a hugely fun story that doesn't hang together because I don't think Barry Letts quite pulled it off. But it could have. And I think a film version of The Awakening with that kind of tone could be terrific. Matt, make your
I mean,
choice. And
it's The
is there some?
Awakening. Um, there's
It
it's
better be because I put it on the artwork
it's
that's
such an odd
behind us, thinking there's
it's
no other
such
choice for this season.
it's such an odd story because it's so short and it's so kind of unregarded. It's not underregarded, it's just unregarded. But if Stephen Moffat or Chris Chibnall took The Awakening, that could make a brilliant modern series. Doctor Who would make a brilliant film. It would make a brilliant four-parter. It's just the decisions that they made when they did The Awakening
Yeah.
to just do a sort of a two-parter just doesn't work. But the actual concept, the pageantry, the historical reenactments, the hauntings, all of these things, is such an obvious four parts story. It's such an obvious 90-minute story because there's so many elements you can get out of it and so much interest. I mean, it's really it pisses me off that they just gave it a two episode slot and
Yeah.
instead they gave well I mean, Frontios I quite like, but that doesn't deserve four episodes. Planet of Fire doesn't deserve. There's lots of padding in this series, and The Awakening is just under padded. So yeah, it's The Awakening.
Right, season 22. John, I think this is your final choice. Is that right? Or is it mine?
Well, I've got 25 as my final choice, I think. But yes.
No, I mean, you're the one who
Oh
gets
yes,
to make the.
I'm making the decisions here. Yes.
All
Yeah.
right, Matt, make a suggestion for season 22 then.
I mean, I'm tempted by Mark Durrani. I think it is distinct from the last film. Um, Industrial Revolution
Hmm.
being affected. It's actually a quite interesting time period for these films or Doctor Who in general to be set. It's not the normal one, and you could pretty much use the same. So the Iron Bridge Museum used the same location to film it, and introduce uh, maybe a recurring evil female presence. It's not a time lady necessarily because that's not what our film doctors are. But if you had the master in one film, you'd probably bring Kate O'Mara in or someone like that to play the Rani. So yeah, it's Mark of the Rani for me. Rewritten, the script being rewritten,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah, yeah.
by actual writers.
Right, I.
They're both dead. It's fine. Rest in peace.
So I'm looking at season 22, whereas with season 21, I thought about more or less all of those stories. There is a children's version of this you could do. I'm looking at season 22 and thinking, I'm not entirely sure there is. Unless you just take the absolute bare bones of the premise and go somewhere utterly different with it. So, Vengeance on Varos, the Doctor ends up inside a television program. That's something you could do. I'm not sure quite how that would translate into a kids' film, but I think it probably could. It would probably be more like the Celestial Toymaker than Vengeance on Varos. But maybe there's a version of Vengeance on Varos that has the tone of Celestial Toymaker that works. Don't know, the two doctors. You wouldn't have two doctors, so it wouldn't be the two doctors, but to have somebody who's taking essentially cannibal creatures and trying to turn them into intelligent creatures by messing with their brain. I think there's perhaps a version of a children's movie that could start with that concept. Kids know what cannibals are, right? I mean, I knew what cannibals were when I was like small.
You grew up in Sheffield, though.
Yeah, where they met. Yeah,
Yeah.
but the thing is, when you're that age, you understand the concept, but you don't think of the consequence. So I think you can make a film about a race of cannibals as long as you don't go into sort of too much detail, and certainly you don't get graphic about what that actually entails. But certainly there's a version of that that you could do. But yeah, essentially, I'm with Matt, really.
I mean, it's
The Mark of the
technically
Rani, it has to be, doesn't it?
these are in parallel with the actual television versions of the story. So
More or
tempting.
less,
The
yeah.
fan in me
Theoretical.
would quite like to see Time Lash, but see the Pertwee side of Time Lash, because that's basically a sequel to an unmade Pertwee story anyway.
Yeah.
So there's sort of, but only very, very slightly do I want to see that. Do I want to see that?
I mean, Time Lash, if you were to tell a story about the Doctor meeting H.G. Wells, and it is also the origin story for the Loch Ness Monster, yeah, but Time Lash is not that story.
No.
No, the problem with Thomas is it's really not very good. I don't think there's any version of it you could retool properly to work as a film.
Did you
No,
say that the
you'd
problem
have
with
to.
the problem with Time Lash is it's really not very good. You said controversially.
Yeah, I was
No,
being generous.
If you were to
the
do,
problem with
if
Time
you,
Lash is it's not very good. I'm just
well, this is it. If you were to do Time Lash, you would, as a film producer, have to say to the TV producer, "Look, we're buying your the rights to your script, but we're actually throwing it out altogether and
yeah.
starting again from page one, and we're just using the character of H.G. Wells and the Loch Ness
You know
Monster."
that
You would,
skip where Ian Levine went diving
yeah,
in that's going to be used again, but
you would lean way more into kind of works of Wells being a more obvious influence rather than just
Yeah, yeah,
nicking the names in there. I think so there is a kind of the concept could be done, but not this version.
yeah. No,
But yeah, I absolutely I was thinking way through the season, and so many of them just aren't suited to be the kind of films we're looking at here.
mm.
It pretty much is, for all I know, Matt said about Pippa J. Baker as perhaps writers of dialogue in particular, they do kind of get what Doctor Who is almost better than Eric Saywood does.
Mm.
So I
And they
would
understand character as well, I
yes,
think.
absolutely. You could slim down the master if you wanted to out of this quite easily.
Yeah, totally.
slimming down Colin Baker would be a bit of
Well, John Purvis felt at this point in his career.
oh yeah, of course it's John Pertwee we're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So yeah, absolutely. And you've got you get what Pertwee kind of needs because he is a big personality. So you match him. I mean, Omara again, she could certainly do. She has the presence to match him as his kind of equal and opposite. So
Or
absolutely,
or potentially
well,
somebody like Stephanie Beecham or,
yeah,
somebody else.
it's up. Yeah, well, you should have John Collins for God's sake at this point.
Yes,
You could
yes.
shoot for it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's that kind of big soap bitch you got Nick for America. Any of them, perfect. So yeah, absolutely. Mark of the Rani is pretty much the only choice I think in this whole season.
Right, I've got to make the next decision, but John, you can make the first sort of choice from season 23. I mean, I don't think that's as hard as it sounds. I think it's easier than season 22
it's
in a
going to be
way.
tricky because we're now down to four stories per season and there's
Yeah,
three
yeah.
of us, so it's
Yeah.
not going to be as necessarily
Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to do the full, let's do the series like we did with the Key to Time. I'm going to go straight away with the most obvious Doctor Who story. Terror of the Vervoids, because it's again you could play it Pertwee getting to be Peter Ustinov
Yeah.
in those films, and he's fruity enough as a performer to get that kind of performance out of there. Plus, you support him with the character actors, who will happily do these films. And if you just cast, who do you have as Travers? I don't know.
On a
God,
Blackman.
yeah, that'll do.
Oh,
Perfect.
that's different
On a
character,
Blackman's
isn't
there already. And all the Patrick Lee, Patrick McGowan, treat it like almost a Columbo thing.
Oh,
Just get
totally. Yeah.
big yes thing. So
And then you've got plant monsters as well. So,
yeah, and you don't need to make them look phallic or resembling genitalia in any way. You could absolutely play that up and just have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, Terror of the Vervoids for me.
Matt, if you got another choice, do you want to make a case for the mysterious planet,
yeah, I'm
maybe?
going to make a case for the mysterious planet.
Yeah.
A bit like the Awakening, that it is a really good central idea of they're on a planet that's future Earth that they don't know as Earth that slowly turns out to be Earth. Glitz and Dibber are still in it, and they'd be a perfect counterpoint to Pertwee. So Pertwee, even though he's essentially playing a different character to his doctor, he's still got that natural pomposity because Pertwee can't not have
Yeah.
that pomposity. And so that's a good balance. And you've got a giant robot in it as well. So you've got that kind of Planet of the Apes or beneath the Planet of the Apes feel to it, where you set half the film on top of the world, slowly revealing itself to be London, and then you go down into the bunker and discover this kind of society of sort of isolated scientists. And it's again potentially a heist movie as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
didn't
mean, you
quite.
take out the Time Lords and you take out the fact that the Earth's moved because you don't need either of those things
No,
to tell this story. It's just the future Earth, and he doesn't realize that that's where he is.
yeah.
And so I've got to make the decision, and also I've got to say, is there a case to be made for the other two? I mean, there is a version of the Ultimate Foe that could be fun for kids, but I don't quite see how you'd manage to get it. I don't quite see how you'd fit it into a film.
It's kind of too wrapped up in the lore, isn't it? That's why I
Yeah,
dismissed it a bit.
so I don't see how you could make it stand alone without having any of that backstory. And Mind Warp, I don't know, a scientist
I just
taking
don't want to
brains
go
out of,
to mind warp anymore.
yeah. So it's between the Mysterious Planet and Terror of the Vervoids, and I'm very tempted by the Mysterious Planet. But actually, I think Terror of the Vervoids, plant monsters on a spaceship with a sort of Hercule Poirot type mystery with John Pertwee getting to strut his stuff. Decent sets, decent designs for the monsters, decent actors in all the supporting parts. And yeah, it's probably a little bit more grown up than some of the stuff we've been talking about. But actually, I think Hercule Poirot for 7-year-olds works. So I think it's Terror of the Vervoids, isn't it? Right, three left. And I don't know. I wonder if this is where it gets more interesting because there's a different tone now, isn't there? And so we're talking putting
I was going to
John
say
Pertwee.
we've done quite well in keeping the same out, haven't we?
Well, really, we have, yeah. And of course, that's where we were always going to have to go, isn't it? But now we've got Andrew Cartmel as the script editor, and we're putting John Pertwee into Sylvester McCoy's stories, which I think is kind of changes the concept again slightly. So this one is for Matt to choose,
Matt,
is that right?
yes.
So, John, do you want to make the first choice from season 24?
I'm going to say I'm going to go with Delta and the Bandman because at this point you are getting the kind of nostalgia for that 50s thing is quite a big thing. You've got obviously you've had Grease coming through. You've had that was big on TV right through
Yeah.
the mid 80s. Why the Dave Lee Travis show was the I can't remember the picture where he did videos for them. So this kind of does feel you get the parents in with this as well. And it's such a kind of a light story. There's that kind of it's almost as a fairy tale as well with Delta. The kind of alien
Mm.
princess comes to Earth, finds her kind of prince in this rough mechanic guy as well. It's got that little romantic comedy story. It's a nice and light little film that you could do for this that I think is you don't need to worry about bringing the Rani back. It's you don't need to go a bit J.G. Ballard and play into the kind of dinginess of Paradise Towers, which I think that needs to work. So yeah, for me, I think Delta again would be my first choice from this season.
See, I think there's a case to be made for all four of these stories. And so, much as I want to make a case for Paradise Towers, I'm actually going to choose Dragonfire because I think like ice caves and a story that starts in a weird shopping centre. So kids will have been dragged off, especially in the sort of 70s and 80s, by their parents on a Saturday morning to do shopping so many times. But to see a weird shopping centre on an ice planet with ice caves, and then there's a story about a dragon that's actually a robot with a crystal in its head. I don't know. I just think, and then to stick John Pertwee and all that, and with a space vampire as well. Yeah, I think you could make a terrifically fun children's film out of Dragonfire, frankly. So yeah, I think I'm making a case for Dragonfire. But Matt, it's your choice. And do you want to?
I considered Dragonfire. I think in terms of contrast with the Vervoid story,
Yeah,
I think possibly Delta
yeah.
pips it. And that was my main choice. I think sending him, we need a time travel story. We haven't had one of those, I think, in a bit. Like I've lost track. But putting Pertwee into the 1950s and having that kind of retro sort of rock and roll feel to a film, that works more for me at this stage. But Dragonfire's a contender. But yeah, it's Delta.
No case for Paradise Towers.
No,
It's the
I
character.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree that you really need to make that. I mean, that kind of works better on television, I think.
Oh,
As
maybe.
in a
Yeah.
film, it would become a little bit oppressive and claustrophobic. Um, and Time of the Rani is a bit too, yeah, is a bit too kind of
Oh, the bubble
doc
traps and the
doctoring
three.
involved. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, there are elements, but put those into Delta and the Bannermen.
And you kind of take it out of the quarry it's set and you put it back in the kind of forest it was originally meant to be in. That would
Okay.
be a way to go with it. So you'd have something more visually stimulating than what
Well,
we
don't
get.
try and don't, I'm agreeing with you, John, with your choice. Don't try and persuade me for another choice. I
As
think
if
I think Delta is more filmic.
Right. Who's making the next choice? Is it you, John?
it's me, yeah.
Matt, do you want to make the first play for season 25 then?
Greatest Show is the tempting one. It is distinct from Delta. It's John's favorite story. But by the way, we chose Simon Brett's famous favorite story in the previous film, so he'll love us for that. Um, so Greatest Show, I think just Pertwee in a circus setting, and the clowns would still work in the film, so you get this kind of safe horror movie that really freaks children out, but in a sort of a safe way. There's nothing gory about Greatest Show, and the archaeologist and Pertwee would work. You can almost combine the two characters together. I mean, Pertwee would be brilliant as that kind of pompous archaeologist, but there's something about the archaeologist feels like one of those civil servant characters in the Pertwee stories coming in there. So that sort of actor would work really well with Pertwee.
Yeah. It's not a million miles away from a character you'd get in a Hammer film or a Carry On film,
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah. So yeah, Greatest Show.
I mean, I wanted to make a case for the story where happy is sad and sad is against the law because I think you could make a terrific kids film out of the Happiness Patrol. You really could. But let's be honest, it's probably the most obvious choice out of all the seasons we're talking about, isn't it? Killer Clowns, John Pertwee and the Killer Clowns, greatest show in the galaxy. John, tell me we're wrong.
Can't because again, Remembrance, I think, is it's not a kids' film. It's trying to do almost too much. It's trying to be a little too grown up in places with the themes it's trying to set.
It's filled with lore
Silver
that we've
Nemesis
not
has
had.
a
And yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, happiness, but I think Happiness Patrol. You would need to play into kind of almost a noirish sensibility to make it really work. I think not necessarily turn the colors down on it, but as
Oh
it
no,
is, I
I think
think
the Happiness
it's as close
Patrol
to gets
could
that
be.
kids film.
I think the Happiness Patrol could be much more colourful. Somewhere between
It's Judge
Phantom
Dredd.
Tollbooth and
Yeah,
Carry On. No, it's Carry On.
possibly. Yeah.
I mean, look at all those
Um,
character actors who are in it, and it's got the Candyman.
but again, we're coming to the art of department here, and I think almost all these stories we could do as well. Again, Silver Nemesis, you've got this statue. You don't need a Time Lord mythology to back it up. It's just
No,
that fun
no, I
kind
was
of
talking
romp
about
through time.
No, I was
Yeah.
talking about. I was talking about Remembrance of the
Oh yeah.
Daleks when I was talking about the mythology. There's a lot
Yeah.
of mythology in Remembrance of the
There
Daleks.
is. But again, some of those you can do. But yeah, it would take a lot to drag me off Greatest Show on this one, and it's perfect. Perfect. And again, you just cast these character actors around him just so he can have absolute fun, and he would know exactly how to play that story. So yeah, Greatest Show. And again, I would keep Ian Reddington in as a villain because he absolutely understands perfectly that kind of central role of that clown.
Oh yes. Right, I don't know how we've done this because I've made a mistake somewhere along the line and somebody skipped a go, but I was sure I wasn't supposed to get the final choice. But yet somehow we've contrived a situation where that's happened. So, Matt, make a case for any other story than Battlefield for season
I
26.
mean, I automatically go to Battlefield. I mean, Curse of Fenric is the other obvious alternative for me. I mean, but we've had vampires in a Pertwee film. Have we had Pertwee? No, that was a Jim Dale film,
It's
but it
Jim
was
Dale,
years
yeah.
Yeah.
ago. And this is a sort of different sort of vampire, but it's not really kids. It's difficult to make a really acceptable kids movie out of Curse of Fenric, I think. I mean, any of them could work. Ghostlight would be a bit interior. Survival would be really good, but I can't see Pertwee running around a quarry anymore. At this point,
Yeah.
Pertwee's back has gone, and he's sort of
Cat,
aged
cat
out.
people on horseback, though.
Yeah, yeah, that could work. But I
And
think
Pertwee has his motorbike as well. He'd love that.
that's true. But I think a sort of a toned down Curse of Fenric would work really well. Some sort of historical setting, a World War Two, Pertwee in World War Two in a World War Two camp with vampires coming out of the sea or sea monsters coming out of the sea. That
Hmm.
seems to work. You'd have to cut out a lot of the mythology and a lot of the stuff that makes it great, quite frankly. But
Actually, I don't
the,
know. I think you
the
could do that stuff.
you could touch on it. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, I mean, make a case for Battlefield, or is there another story there that you can make a
I,
case for?
okay, I think again, the thing I was going to think about survival was part of it is the point of the doctor wandering around these suburban streets, and I would love Pertwee just wandering around this kind of
I mean,
domestic suburbia,
that's dimensions
just
in
as a
time, isn't it?
contrast.
that's
Yes,
that's it.
exactly, and it works there. But I think, yeah, for me, Battlefield is just the obvious choice because you just have that. Again, you're playing into the mythic elements. It's those old stories that King Arthur. This is the note that this series of films is going to essentially go out on for at least a few years. You have a big, high concept.
Well, Doctor Who as Merlin is
Yeah,
just one of the great ideas in the entire history of the series, I
and
think.
you can see Pertwee being shocked at because the contrast between Pertwee's and again the Queequeg stuff from the Demons. So you're playing into that kind of thing that he was in the Demons. He
Yeah.
played back at that big personality. He'd be very different from Sylvester McCoy. Sylvester McCoy was that kind of little tricksy guy, whereas Pertwee would be the Gandalf figure, that big, and you could see that he'd come out in the wizard's robes quite happily and just play that
Yeah,
completely.
yeah.
I would love that. So yeah, I hate to go off the opposite. And again, you could do such justice to that spaceship under the lake as well.
Well,
That's
and
so
there
many
are other
ideas.
things. There are other things in there that I suspect you'd probably be tempted to drop. So, I mean, you wouldn't have the Brigadier in it, for example. So that
No,
end of the
you take
story.
the unit elements,
But
but
the
again, you could keep Gene Marsh from it as well completely.
Oh
Although I don't
well,
know because it's obviously the ex couple, so there's an extra dynamic in there as well.
but you'd have the scene where Jean Marsh gives, or whoever plays that role, gives the sight back to the woman in the pub for doing her a favor, And stuff like the
'Cause that scene with the
pen.
sight of you could imagine them coming back. So the kids kind of looking back on that and going, "Oh my God!" And it's one of the things you almost see as not talk about as not and realize how good it was afterwards. Even if you skipped it for the big stuff when you were a kid.
Well, yeah, and the pentangle, right? So, I mean, because we watch Battlefield and we're grown-ups, we think of that as warding off evil. But it doesn't have to be warding off evil. It can be just magic that keeps the monsters at bay.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
and the Destroyer is such a great idea for for a film. That big visual.
yeah, yeah. So totally it has to be Battlefield to go out on. And, knights with electric swords or whatever. That could be just a wild adventure, a wild ride of a final story. And the Doctor as Merlin. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go then. We have Cushing done regardless, right to the very end of the classic series. I don't know if we can come back and do this for the modern series. I think we've wrung everything out of
I don't
this
know.
concept.
I think we could, but it's a short one now, isn't it? It's only got what 12, 13 seasons. It's only one more episode.
12, 13, 15, John.
Close enough. Two of them are too short to make any difference. It's fine.
And also, there's like 10 stories in each season, so there's a lot more to
Six
choose
in
from.
Flux, eight in Davis.
Yeah, but
Yeah, fine. Don't worry.
maybe, but certainly not something that I was planning on doing.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have trouble after the failed McGann remake, aren't they?
Right, we'll be back and do something else next time instead. We'll probably be fixing Chris Chibnall or fixing Russell T Davies part two, actually. I think this is going to come out after the Chibnall one and before the Davis one, so that'll be next. Until that happens, I was JR,
I was John.
I was Matt.
and we will speak again soon.